I wanted a place for people to receive authentic guidance and practical ways to awaken. Thought-provoking, paradigm-shifting, and empowering. This is about expanding our human consciousness to create a wave of new possibilities. I'm Dr. Theresa Bullard, and this is Quantum Minds TV. Welcome back to Quantum Minds TV, where we take a deep dive into various perspectives on what it's going to take to create a shift in human consciousness. In this episode, we're continuing the conversation with mentor, leader, and sovereign Ipsissimus of the modern mystery school, Dave Lanyon, who bridges the worlds of hermetics, metaphysics, and spirituality with practical wisdom that can be universally applied to change people's lives.
So I jokingly say, you know this, T, I jokingly say, Ipsissimus Dave is always right. And the reason I can say that is because I'm always willing to be wrong. I'm always willing to be redirected and corrected. And so in that, I can say I'm always right because I'm always willing to be wrong. And that comes from being in a field of integrity. I'm happy to be wrong. It would allow me to grow. And so in our growth in life, integrity is just like an essential to learning about really anything, but hermetics, it's really important. And I know for you, with your background, I mean, geez, I don't know how someone could have your credentials, especially in science, without integrity, would just fall apart really quickly, right?
Yeah, I think that they focus more on credibility than integrity. But it's hard to ultimately maintain credibility if you don't have integrity, because it's a very rigorous science and you have to really pay attention to the minutiae. Everything has to be just so that there's repeatability, and otherwise there is no science. So I think it's there, but it's not necessarily emphasized as a concept, or, they call it other things. But, one of the hermetic teachings also is this principle of correspondence, and as above, so below, but also as the inner, so the outer. And when you talk about integrity, for example, if we lack integrity in our own inner world and in our own life, and then we look out at the world and we wonder why there's so much hypocrisy in the world. And then rather than pointing the finger out there at all the hypocrisy and those people, and they should be different, we have to look in here and ask, where are we out of integrity? And this is something that you brought up in a teaching not that long ago, where it was like, even to that minutia level of where are we, maybe needing to improve upon our own integrity with what we say we believe, what we teach, and so forth. And anywhere where we need to take that microscopic look at our own lives and see, where can I improve upon my integrity so that I can not only be the change in my life, but also start being the change in the world, and holding that light and that higher standard. And that's one of the things that I really love about the mystery school, because, the world really is devolving into mediocrity, more hypocrisy, more, just go with the crowd and whatever's in, and, fear of being canceled if you say the wrong thing or offend somebody. And so everyone's like stifling their voice and kind of holding back and not caring as much about the detail, or standing firm in their integrity. And not everywhere, but, I think that a lot of the good people are very quiet, but it's like we're getting pushed to a point where we have to start standing strong again. And one of the things I love about the mystery school is very much about moving beyond mediocrity into that royalty, into that divinity, nobility, really standing up, being willing to be the warrior out there, but a warrior who's standing for light and peace and goodness. And, so why is it important for us to have not just this, devotion to being a healer, a teacher, a servant of light, but also the warrior side of it?
Oh yeah, the warrior side. Yeah. Well, It's irrefutable that the world is full of a great deal of darkness. It's of course full of light, but it's also full of a great deal of darkness. And there is, if we were to look at history, I love history. It's a hobby of mine. I've studied history all over the world. But if we were to look at the history of cultures and societies, there's a lot of negativity that's happened. And as much as we're elevated as humans, we continue to perpetrate war as a way to resolve problems. We continue to perpetrate the lack of resources as a reason to go to war often. We have religious wars, culture wars, social wars, many that are very physical, many now that have become a war of the spirit, of the mind. I'm going to attack you and mentally break you until you comply. And so much of all of these things is someone trying to impose a state of negativity on you. Now, when they do that, they will always try and perpetrate that it's done for out of integrity and for the right reasons. You need to know this, you need to comply, you need to agree, you need to surrender to my way of thinking or what I want, my will, because it's the right thing to do. And but I don't know if that's the right thing for you. That's the point. The point is that you're a free will individual, and that's something you have to discern for yourself. When that darkness comes and you've decided that no, I'm not going to let it in here, there has to be a warrior standing at the boundary. So if I were to put it this way, if you were to keep darkness, if you were to keep evil out of your life, where there is evil outside of your life, there is going to be a boundary between your life and where that evil is, wherever that line is, wherever that mystical line is, physical line is, there is going to be a place where you go, inside of this is good, and outside of this, I deem it to be bad. There's nothing going to stop the bad from coming in unless you're standing on that boundary and saying no. And as warriors, we have a program called Warriors of Light that is an aspect of ritual mastery. As warriors, our job is to say no to that evil, to letting that evil in our lives or into other people's lives, that we should not be a perpetrator of evil, and nor should we allow it to sort of roam freely within our own life. But the boundaries that we draw as warriors must be drawn out of love, out of a love of the light, not out of a hatred for the dark. And too many people today, when they interpret being a warrior, standing up for themselves or standing up for others, it is done out of a malice or an anger or a negativity towards someone else or something else. And to be a warrior, and you need to be a warrior in the world because the darkness won't stop otherwise, you have to be standing up for the good, not against the bad, but for the good. So we stand on the boundary between that which is good and that which isn't. And we stand in integrity of something that is a better way, a better world. And in that, we should never desire to harm anybody.
There's some people though in the world today that believe, like, there's a belief that, and maybe it's mostly New Age, but I think that you find it, that if we don't, if we focus on the idea that there's bad out there or evil out there, then I'm going to attract it to me. And therefore, if I only focus on the good and I either deny or ignore that there's evil or negative things happening out there, then I'll only attract the good to me. And then it goes into this whole, kind of, it extends to, well, there is no evil, right? And it's all good, or it's all just an illusion. And so you're saying, no, we actually have to be aware of and be ready to stand firm and stand strong rather than just ignore and hope it goes away. So, it's a real flip of a paradigm for people to kind of confront that. And some people really get afraid, it brings up fear, this idea of admitting or acknowledging that there is evil in the world and the fear that it could be around. And it's easier for them to be in that ignorance is bliss sort of state. So what would you say to people who are, struggling with that?
Two things. One is I'd have to ask them to define what good is. And I'm going to guess, because it would be a guess, that they're talking about comfort. And so as opposed to true good, they're talking about comfortable, which is often just another form of stagnation, which is not good. So one is I'd have to know what they mean by good. The second one would be that it is the dismissal of reality that prevents you from making reality better. So those that want to live in a world where they only see the good, clearly are going to allow what is bad to continue to perpetrate and remain and never stop. And so if we want to make reality better, we have to actually acknowledge what reality is so we can improve upon it, so that we can make that thing better. Anyone who's been in a war knows the world is not all good. Anyone who's been harmed by another person knows the world is not all good. Anyone that has one eye open knows the world is not all good. But that doesn't mean that we should collapse and become sort of an emotional heap of, oh my God, the world's not good, it's all awful. Or, as some would say, well, if it's God, God must be a form of evil, right? Because God allows evil, or God is indifferent, doesn't care. And there's actually answers to all those things, but it starts with you first acknowledging that reality is that evil exists in the world. There's plenty of examples of it, but also reality is that good exists. And we need to cultivate, nurture, farm the good, make it better, make it stronger. You know, I love gardening and I love lawn care. I'm that kind of guy. I like to take care of all those things. And one of the things that anyone knows who has a lawn is that you got to keep the weeds out of your lawn or your grass is dead. So if you don't do something about those weeds, they're going to overwhelm your lawn and then you're going to have no grass. And if I were to say the grass is good and the weeds are bad, as an example, we've got to do something about the weeds. But how I do that is I don't just go after the weeds. I also take care of the grass. I make sure my grass is strong and healthy. It's getting everything it needs. And yes, I also address the weeds. So they're not mutually exclusive that one can say, because I see evil, there's nothing to do about it. You go, no, you can absolutely focus on the good while accepting the reality that evil exists. And yes, you're going to have to draw some pretty clear boundaries, most especially, first and foremost, in your own personal life, that you don't choose relationships that aren't good for you. And I mean that in its truest sense, that the people that you have in your life are good. And they may be tough, they may be pushy even, but they push you the right way. And if you identify that this is a good relationship, then that's the first boundary you drew. I wouldn't recommend any student let someone into their life that is harmful to them. And yes, that includes family and friends. That might be, well, I got to make some different decisions and draw some different boundaries. So that's just one small aspect of when we say you have to be a warrior in your life and be strong. And that first motivation for a warrior should come from, I love myself, therefore I can love others, and therefore I want love to be the dominant factor, not this evil thing. You know, I see too many social movements today that are guised in the love of something, but are just perpetrators of hate. And hate, no matter what your justification, doesn't make the world a more loving place. And we go back to that integrity part. Be an integrity of the light means don't hate to cause change, love to cause change. So it's absolutely necessary to be a warrior.
Let's take a pause from this fascinating conversation to enjoy a quick consciousness break. You are a dethroned sovereign who consented to existence to recover your crown. In mystery school tradition, the concept of embodying your royalty and sovereignty is a core metaphysical teaching. In a world that bows to mediocrity, the values of royalty course through our lineage. To be royal is to be integrous, to be honest, have honor, virtue, decency, and conduct oneself with moral righteousness. Royalty is taking responsibility for the kingdom, but first, for the self, the path back to personal power in a world that abdicates responsibility. It is a service to others. The king and the queen are in service to their people and their mission focused on the good of the whole. Royalty is honoring and valuing who and what you are, while also holding that same respect for others. If we hold the belief that all humans are the kings and queens of their own life, then we should approach all people with that in mind. Royalty exists in the detail and care you put into your internal and external kingdom.
Now, when you're talking good and evil, are we talking about it in a religious perspective? Are we talking about it in a common sort of everyone should have the same definition of what these terms are? Or how do you define what is good and what's evil? How do you know? How do you discern that?
Well, in the traditions of the mystery school, evil is that which stops your progression. So if something is helping you to progress, to understand, to know thyself, then it is serving good. It's serving a good purpose for you. And where I see people make the biggest mistake is they interpret good as non-challenging. So if it doesn't challenge me and it helps to fulfill my ego's desires, it's good. And that's actually not the definition of good at all. Actually, that often misleads you. It is seeking constant comfort as opposed to growth that causes stagnation and the dissatisfaction of the self, which leads to apathy and depression and many other things. So the right amount and in the correct way of challenging someone can be very good. The discomfort, if you think about your personal life, it's often been the discomfort that led to the greatest joy. So for most people, I would say that they honestly don't understand when we talk good and evil, what I'm talking about. If I were to say that evil creates a repetitive cycle of suffering and that good is that which breaks that cycle into growth, you might begin to have a conception of where we need to go when it comes to good and evil. And a huge part of good is empowerment, is acknowledging the self as a powerful individual who can make a difference for themselves. And so something that disempowers you and creates stagnation and says you can't, that is often something that is evil in your life and is a negative, and you have to stand up against that and find that strength to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Now, one of the things that you mentioned before is Shambhala, and that we, are very much on this mission of trying to help make the world become a better place, what we call Shambhala, a more balanced world, a more sustainable world, harmonious, and yet it'll be, futuristic at the same time. Now, when we look at the world today, it's very easy to get dismayed. It's very easy to look at the world and say it's falling apart, or we're backtracking, we're regressing. Is there any hope, right? In where, like, how far out is it that this new Shambhala might actually come? What's it going to take to succeed at fulfilling this mission and making that leap? When you look at the world, where's the hope, and how do we bring that in to help encourage people, that there is a real strong chance that we're going to succeed at this?
Well, the first thing is, if someone even questions where's the hope, there's hope, because they're aware it exists. So in acknowledging, when someone says there's no hope, I take that as a hopeful sign, because I'm like, it sounds weird, but you have to acknowledge that hope exists for you to say there is none. So the first thing is, the world, yes, can absolutely feel like sort of a depressive place, a hopeless place. And there are times you sort of wake up and you look at your social media or the news and you just say, oh my God, how is this ever going to get better? But it does get better. And if we look at history, a lot of people today want to talk about history as though it exists today. And you say, that horrible history that you look at of the past, that means we grew past it. And we look at it through the lens of understanding, hey, that wasn't a good decision. We tried that. It wasn't good. It ended up being a bad thing for us. So we let it go and we moved on. And in the totality of humans, we're actually really good at growth. I mean, we wouldn't have what they purport to be about 8 billion people on the planet today if we weren't really good at being good. We actually are quite successful at tackling problems and overcoming them. So the first thing I say is you've gotten this far already. And for every person who's watching this, now or in the future, I would say to you, you are the accumulation, the results of all those who survived every calamity before you, or you wouldn't exist. So you are in a chain of survivors who have overcome great obstacles, great problems, and succeeded. And can you imagine someone, if we were to take that, let's go back to World War II. How hopeless was it if you were in World War II and living in Europe? Was there going to be brighter days? It's always been, hope is not a plan, but it's a motivator for a plan. And so hope always exists. However, hope comes from gratitude. You first have to count your blessings if you're going to have hope. And as you count your blessings, so do you realize that there is hope because there are good things. And with those good tools, within gratitude, we realize we have, in most cases, all the tools we need to create the thing that we hope will happen, the better world. It's in counting the very things that you have today in front of you that you're grateful for that allows you to go, oh, I now can actually make a better world. I just was missing my blessings. And so much today, I look at the world, and yes, it could be depressing, but we've never lived in a more amazing, technologically advanced potential for a greater world than ever in history. When I was a kid, if you had said to me, you're going to have a device that sits in your hand that gives you all the knowledge of the world in it, I would have went, are you crazy? That's sci-fi. That's Star Trek. And that's your cell phone today. And that's just one tiny thing of where we're going. Self-driving cars, my God. The only thing I'm disappointed in is flying cars. I'm still waiting for the flying cars. Where are the flying cars? I want them.
They're happening. I just heard the other day that even Dubai and Japan are starting to give licenses for flying taxis. So they're coming.
Yeah, that's the only thing. That's the only thing. But there's always been hope for the planet. And it is usually on the other side of the darkest days that our greatest potential has come. And so if these are dark days, then you can look forward to a much brighter future. Because through the darkness, we've learned so much about what we don't like about it, when we're challenged by all of this. So what creates the potential and the light is the response by the darkness to that light. So usually the world gets crazier when there's more light coming in, not the other way around. It is the resistance to that light, to that better way, that causes the calamities, but those eventually die off. And what's left is the good that came in, and we sort of elevate from that position. So is there hope? Yes. And should we be grateful for it? 100%.
Join us again as we continue to dive deeper into this enlightening conversation with Ipsissimus Dave Lanyon on the next episode of Quantum Minds TV.
This conscious conversation was created, produced, and recorded by Dr. Theresa Bullard in collaboration with Dave Lanyon and edited by Verse Content and HH Films and Photo. The theme music and intro videography were produced by Tim Mountain of Even Load Productions. Quantum Minds TV is a product of the Quantum Learning Academy.